Okay, let's go over the basic controls and interface. So, the game has a basic interface that gives some very important information, and almost all of it, pretty much all of it, is contained over here in the left of the screen, in this little panel on the left. So, at the very top, we have our map, which has scroll bars. We can scroll around. Now, my personal recommendation is to move your cursor to the left of the map, and depending, if you're using a laptop, depending on your screen, if you don't have it tilted properly to your face, it can be really difficult to see this thin vertical bar to the left of the map. But once you see that thin vertical bar to the left, if you left click on it, it will pop the map out, and you can drag this to the appropriate size, but you'll find that depending on who you are, maybe this kind of irritates you that it's going to have to block up a portion of the screen. So once that pops up, what I like to do is just close it, and it will bring your map down here full size, which this is the most helpful version of the map in my experience. Then up at the top here of the panel, you will see the name of your nation. In this example, I'm the Antarcticans. We have your population, which right now is 0 because we have no cities, but it is the number of people across of your nation, which corresponds to how productive your nation can be, what its total, maybe not productive, but its potential is. Then we have the year, which is an arbitrary number. You started at 4000 BCE, and this number is probably one of the most meaningless numbers in the game. You can pretty much ignore it. However, to the right of the year is a very important number. It's in parentheses here, and it is the turn number. This game does not start at turn 1, it actually starts at turn 0, and is referenced by T0, turn 0. Our average game is going to go between 30 to 50 turns. Maybe that will change in the future, but that's been the pattern so far. Then we have gold. You're almost always, we can change this in the settings, but every game we've played so far, the default setting has been you start with 50 gold. Now, so right here where it says 50, that's going to be the total treasury of your nation. To the right of that, in parentheses, you'll see +0 when you first start. This is your income. Now, this can be a positive or a negative number. Right now, it is 0, because of course we have no income, we have no cities to generate income. But normally this will be a positive number. However, it can be a negative number if if the money that you're paying out every turn to support buildings and stuff like that is greater than your income. This will be negative, which is not good, but acceptable as long as you have a surplus in the treasury to pay for that deficit each turn. But God help you if you have negative gold and $0 in the treasury. Things get disastrous as the bank pretty much repossesses all of the buildings that you have and they are sold off. So avoid that. Underneath that, we have what is called your tax rate, which is probably not the best name for it, but that's what the game calls it. And it is broken down into 3 categories that will always add up to 100%. You have tax, the amount of gold that you bring in; luxury, the amount of resources that go to making people happy; and science, the amount of resources that are going to further your scientific endeavors. And just below that, we have the buttons that set that rate. You'll see that science is at 60, and we have a total of 10 buttons down here. And you'll see that since science is at 60, we have 6 vials. Tax is at 40. We have 4 gold pieces, so those correspond. Then we have the little light bulb right here, which if you hover over will give you information about your current scientific project. And as you, on any given project, as you get closer and closer to completion, the light bulb will begin to illuminate. After that, we have the little sun, which represents the global rate of global warming. And we'll say the pollution rate, which by default is -4%, which means that global warming is not a problem. And that will give some details. We can go over global warming later. And then we have the corollary, which is nuclear winter. And it starts the same with -4%. Both of those are, once those become a problem, global warming comes from pollution, which begins to be a problem after the Industrial Revolution occurs in the game. And nuclear winter occurs after the nuclear age when people are dropping nukes and there's nuclear fallout all over the place. And both are global problems for people. With global warming, sea levels rise and grasslands turn to deserts and there's less food available. And nuclear winter, everything turns to ice. And they're both a fucking disaster. After that, we have an icon that shows us what our current government is. That you always start off in despotism. We'll go into governments later. And to the right of that, we have the timer. During these tutorials, you will see that it only will say off, where the timer normally is. However, this will normally be a timer that begins at 24 hours and will count down, but you will not see anything here for the sake of this tutorial, because I don't want to have to wait a day just to do a single episode of this tutorial. Below that is the turn done button. This is very important and often forgotten about, which can lead to frustrations with other players, but is not the end of the world. When you are done taking your turn, please click the turn done button, because if everybody clicks the turn done button, the turn or day ends. I guess from the previous tutorial, you'll understand that the nuance of the word turn for the sake of this game. But when you click turn done, if everybody has clicked turn done, everybody doesn't have to wait the full 24 hours. The next turn will automatically begin and the timer is reset to 24 hours. So please click turn done when you're done. And below that, this little area right here, starting with settlers and ending with the icon of a unit. This is where we will get information about a given unit and where they are currently standing. So right here we have the title. The currently selected unit is a settler, and you can see his little icon at the bottom here. It says he has 3 moves remaining, meaning he can move 3 tiles. And he is currently standing on a plains tile. And once you learn the tiles, you'll say, well, I can see that there's plains, but sometimes, as you will learn as you go through the game, sometimes it's easier than others to understand what type of tile your unit is standing on, because the image of the unit can block the tile. It happens. So you can always reference here to see exactly what he is standing on. Okay, so we have up at the very top here on the left, we have our different little menus. Under game, we have leave and quit. Self-explanatory. You really don't need, you can just use the red X at the top right of the screen. Not so important here. Edit, you'll find nothing really useful under there. View, you can go through here and play around. The default settings here are probably the best, but there's a couple that you want to mess with. The main one that you'll want to use, and by the way, feel free to go through and play with them one by one. I do recommend that after you play with each one, you return it to its state, unless you fully understand what it does. But the main one that you're going to use is Map Grid, which most experienced players will just use the Control key and press G. The shortcuts are a lifesaver throughout this whole game in many different areas. But if you select Map Grid, you'll see, oh, now I can look at it like a chessboard and start and have a good visual representation of the number of tiles. I personally will just always hit Control G. But if you ever can't remember the shortcuts, just open up these. Open up your menus, and the shortcuts are listed on the right of the menu. Then we have a handful of these menus that relate specifically to units, and we'll go over these when we do an in-depth dive into units. Unit, work, combat, all of those relate to units, and we'll cover those further later. Now, civilization. This is where you're going to get your high-level data about your civilization and other civilizations. Once again, experienced players will be using the F keys. Utilize your shortcuts. They're wonderful. But if you can't remember your shortcuts, come over to civilization. It'll give the title, and you'll have a button if you're not a fan of F keys. But so we have, and I'm here. Look at your F keys, but right now I'm going to go ahead and just press the F keys themselves to navigate through them for the sake of time. F1 will always bring you back to the map in the main screen. F2 will bring you to a summary of your units. Give you some information about the units that exist in your nation. F3 will give a summary about the nation and some basic information about all of that. And F4, when you have cities, of which we currently have none, it will give you basic information about your cities and allow you to give high-level commands to your cities. In the beginning, you will micromanage your cities, but as the number of cities that you have starts growing, it will not be efficient for you to micromanage your cities, and you will give high-level orders to your nation. F5 is, I guess you could call it your economy screen. I think, in fact, it's even called your economy screen. This will talk about the buildings that exist throughout your nation and what they're costing you, and it will give a list down here at the bottom of your gross revenue and your total costs. So you have your revenue and your expenses here, and then what you have afterwards, your net, will be listed up here where we talked about at gold at the top left over in your information pane. Now F6 is your technology screen. This is the screen that's going to show the entire technology tree going from your kind of Greek phalanx over here, your beginning defensive unit, all the way to the end, all the way through the Industrial Revolution, your World War I and II type units, all the way to your modern-ish. You have things like missiles and finally stealth fighters. Then after that, you'll have these other ones: wonders of the world, top 5 cities, and demographics, F7, F8, F11. Those ones will give you information pertaining to all nations. And as you go through, feel free to look at them. Some of them are self-explanatory. Demographics is a little bit different. Look at demographics. It has a list of stats, and on the right here you can see how you rank according to other nations. If you want detailed understanding about how these numbers are generated, do a Google search for the math of Freeciv. Just type that in, the math of Freeciv, and there will be an article that explains the actual underlying math of how all these numbers are generated and what they really mean. The other spaceship, we don't really use that in our game. We disable the space race. We can, if you want, I'm not going to go deep into the spaceship because we don't utilize that part of the game, but if you're interested in that, feel free to text me and I'll explain it. One that's really important here is messages. It is F9, and this is the part where every turn you're not going to be logged on. If you've been attacked in some foreign land or one of your cities is starving, you're not necessarily going to know that that's happened automatically unless you're just completely on the ball But as your nation expands, and even early on, this screen will give you pretty much all updates of what's going on that's relevant to your nation. So check this every single turn. And when something new happens, you'll notice that a tab, as I've been clicking all these, we're having tabs down at the bottom. If you see anything in blue or red highlighted down at the bottom, something new has happened, check it. Check your messages every single game. If there's nothing there, that's fine. And continue to look through your cities and do your own research in your nation. But the messages are very important. Do not ignore them. Read through every single one. It is incredibly helpful. So the last thing that we'll go over here is how do you scroll around the map? Our maps connect west to east. It is maybe not really a globe because you can't scroll north to south completely. You won't connect going north. It won't wrap all the way around to south. So the map is kind of a cylinder. But what you do is, unlike other modern games where you just move your mouse around and the map moves, you point your mouse somewhere and right click, and the game will center that tile. Wherever you click, that tile now becomes the new center. So if you notice here, keep going around, and you can look over the left here on the mini map and see what's happening over there. So you keep right clicking, and going farther away, and eventually you'll wrap all the way around. So east to west connect, north to south do not. That's one way that you'll never be able to know where you land east to west in the very beginning. It wraps all the way around. But you can get an idea of your orientation north to south because it ends going north to south. And I think that wraps it up for the basic controls and interface. The next episode we will go into the starting units and how to move and how to begin creating a world-class nation.